Good evening, everybody. Welcome to SVTV. I'm Andy Fleming. We're joined this evening by Ben Pipes and Dr. Nicky Osborne for their roles with Scottish Volleyball, in particular getting our athletes back on the beach. So Ben is currently waiting backstage with Blair, and it's an interesting show tonight because Nicky, through her work commitments, will be joining us about 8:30, and we're hoping that between Ben and Nicky we'll get a real picture of the role that they are currently functioning in Scottish Volleyball, and basically since you last saw Ben, what he's been up to, and how Nicky has ended up involved with. So there's a great little story that's about to unfold over the next sort of hour, 90 minutes on SVTV. So without further delay, let's just bring out Ben, who is with Blair, and I promise I'll get his title right. So here we go. Good evening, Ben. For the purposes of this evening, you are our beach performance lead for this evening, but in your other job you are Assistant Regional Performance Manager in the West at the Institute of Sport. Good evening, mate. How are you?
I'm very well. I'll be honest, I'm on the coffees, Andy. I think it's nearly the Easter weekend, so I'm still on the coffees, but no, very well, very good.
No, do you know what? It's probably badly needed, and I guess what we're going to do over the next sort of 30 minutes, maybe even longer, as the show goes on, is delve into why coffee has become so important to you. Returning to SVTV, which is great. It's always great to see you being part of Scottish Volleyball. So last time we spoke, we were just introducing you back to the volleyball community and letting them know that you've returned. You're now well under the table and been working extremely hard for us. So let's just try and as quick as possible, figure out how that's been for you. Certainly we know the sort of stuff that you've been up to. So what's been happening since we last spoke to you, Ben?
Well, I think first thing is SVTV has upgraded itself. I was kind of sitting in the background there and listening to everything, and I think I'd said to Blair as well when I first came on. Yeah, amazing how all of this stuff, I suppose, is built, and how you guys have built that in the COVID era. Let's say that. Yeah, as you said, busy times, but I think, yeah, let's have it right. I love what I do. I love the fact that I get to kind of come back, work with volleyball and work with the kind of the emerging kind of beach performance side of it. And I think the other thing to note as well, Andy, like you said, in my other role as working with Sport Scotland, is this is a really good partnership. There's always been good working relationship between Scottish Volleyball and Sport Scotland, and the kind of stars align when there's that opportunity to get me seconded back into a sport that I love, and then with a governing body that's well respected by Sport Scotland as well. So yeah, late nights, lots of coffee, early mornings, but yeah, we love, right? So it's it's all good. I think if I was gonna give a bit of a list, I guess, of what we've done, I think it's captured under that getting the athletes back on the sand is probably the kind of headline piece to that, Andy.
Yeah, it's been vital for us. I think Lynn Beattie spent a lot of time working on the development of the site at Liberton, and that presented a whole set of challenges for you because you've utilised that as one of our main sort of sites at getting our athletes back. So there's been a lot of work going on in the background to getting our athletes back, and the beautiful thing is we've managed to do that, and we've done it very, very safely. Now, let's just delve right into that. COVID has been an absolute nightmare in terms of paperwork. So, is it fair to say that's how we should describe it?
Look, I think it's a reality. It's necessity, but there's always that element of it needs to be done. So there's that element of, I guess, for us and the likes of me, you and Blair, and like you said, Lynn and the governing body, it's about building up the strength of the mitigation and I guess getting the documentation to line up with what government are expecting and what the clinical teams at the institute are expecting. from us. So I think, yeah, it's nobody's going to tell you it's not a lot of work. But I think, again, it's that it is all for the right reasons. It is, like you said, it's a global pandemic. These are unbelievably, crazy times for everybody. And I think there's one kind of part of me that always comes back to that element of we are getting to do what we love. Like athletes are back on the sand. It's maybe not always as fast as we like, or as kind of moving as freely as we'd like. But like you said earlier on, it's as safe as it can be. And ultimately, it's more than what some people can do, even with their own families. So the fact that we've got that dispensation with government, with Sports Scotland, and then we're able to kind of put in the work to meet the mitigation, and then credit to the athletes and the coaches as well for then rising to that. It's new for them as much as it is for us. So it is a whole new world for everybody.
Well, I mean, one of the great joys I had was for the first time in a year, I managed to get on a road trip out to Liberton to actually see some live action and to witness those mitigations in action. And I can't stress enough how impressed I was with the players and the way that they've taken to the new normal, as we've sort of highlighted to people. The actual meat and bones of it then, Ben, so from paperwork side, what's that journey like for us creating a piece of paper to then making it go live with the athletes at Liberton or Portobello? So what sort of journey does that paperwork take?
Yeah, so
that stage where sand action takes place.
So I think I suppose in essence the preparation for this started probably in November last year. So the first thing you need to do when it comes to the elite sport guidance is you need to find yourself within it. So the Commonwealth Games is that kind of piece where Scottish volleyball and beach volleyball, because of the Commonwealth Games and because of that ambition to qualify and compete at the games, that falling under the guidance and finding yourself within that description becomes a reality. So the selection policy that we built in place, working with Team Scotland, the work we were doing to put a structure around the programme, identifying athletes coming forward, that period between November and kind of December, January was key to then be in a position to almost make an approach to government to say, look, this is where we exist in the description. This is what we'd like to do. This is where we'd like to go. And we need that elite guidance I think the best way to describe it is to get consistency. COVID is not very friendly when it comes to giving consistency. Guidance needs to change, all those different things. So once we've done that identification piece, it's then a case of starting at what's described as step one. So step one was about a resumption of elite training.
Yeah.
And part of that is then your foundation documentation. So you essentially, once you get it right from that moment, you then start to add and build and add different sections. And ultimately, it does start to get more complicated and more moving beast. So step one for the athletes, it looked like a heavy amount of information to absorb, lots of presentations. I think one presentation that I even did an audio descript on because there was so much information I couldn't keep sending it out. So the team had my Yorkshire tones trying to understand COVID elite guidance. I'm sure that was quite interesting for them. But
yeah, there was a standing joke in the office that we'd seen that presentation more than we'd seen our family. So
I suppose that getting the information out to them once we built it in consultation with Nikki, who you'll have on the call. So there's a big need for the elite guidance to be, I would describe it as clinically led. So the best way to think about it is the government and the local kind of health boards, they have these restrictions in place to manage the virus. So keeping distance, good hand hygiene and respiratory hygiene, and then the lockdowns that they've used, the shutting down certain social parts of society, that's a mechanism to keep people safe, to keep a gap between people with the virus. In elite sport, it's about having medically led plans and well mitigated plans to essentially move to a different, almost like a different tune, a different beat. So we were going to the sand when other people couldn't. We were coming from Glasgow to Edinburgh when other people couldn't. And that's because we had the strength in the mitigation, we had the medical support, we had the guidance that the government had supplied us with to know that we were doing our own disease control to make sure that we keep COVID out of our environment,
Yeah.
which is a priority. But then also we don't stimulate kind of COVID within the community within the community environment, because that's a huge responsibility that you take on once you step into this channel. Is you're doing things that other people can't, and you become a risk to the general public. You're a risk to your household. You're a risk to your neighbors ultimately. So yeah, step one was lots of information, a kind of a foundation document to then build from, and it meant the athletes could get together. It needed to be socially distanced, so when they were training, they weren't able to freely play or open play. But at least we were able to get them moving. We could do drills, we could share equipment, and we could start that return to training.
Yeah, I mean, let's say I've dabbled a little bit of beach volleyball in my past, and obviously you've played a little bit of volleyball now and then. The conditions that the athletes are working under are unlike any conditions that you've ever played under. I've ever played under. It must be really difficult for them to get their head around. How have you been tackling that?
Yeah, 100%. And I think I guess in my role within the kind of assistant regional manager in the West, very, very fortunate to work with some of the kind of big sports in Scotland and Scots that work on Team GB. So for me as an observer, like you said, my days are done as far as playing, but these are incredible times for athletes. Like it is really challenging, and the way they have to operate is completely different. The way they have to think is completely different. The scrutiny that the athletes get now, every picture on social media, people are zooming in. Are they at distance? Are they wearing a mask? Have they washed their hands? It is a whole new pressure. So I think the way we've combated that is, I think from the start, we've always tried to give the reality to the athletes. Yeah. So this is what we have to do. It's maybe not going to be enjoyable. There is lots of things to do. It needs to be in place, but I think it's always better to have that conversation than shelter or feeling like you're sheltering somebody from it. And then hopefully communication and open communication is the other one. That's taken some time. Again, I think that's where you'd love to organise a Teams chat with a group, and then everyone's kind of flying in with discussions and questions in real time. But the truth is, sometimes you need to digest information and then come up with a question. So yeah, sometimes it's answering emails in the evening, sometimes it's answering emails during the day, sometimes it's just trying to pick up the phone and almost be available to answer those questions, to ease concerns, I guess. And ultimately, I think the key to COVID is getting a level of understanding around why are we doing this. So what is the point of the guidance? Like, because if you're not careful, it's viewed as like a ticking box exercise, which in this world, and if you consider it under that health and safety banner, it isn't. It's a necessity now. Like COVID's crafty, and it will find a way in. That's why these diseases thrive. Is they find a way. So we have to put as much mitigation in as we can, like I said, to protect our people, so protect the performance athletes that are signing up to this and opting in. That's our responsibility. And then, like I said, past that, there's also that feeling of I don't want them going home and taking it to their family. I don't want them joining a UK beach tour in the summer and then something coming from that as well. So yeah,
difficult times. But we got some good news. I think it was last Friday from Mike Whittingham. Now, what's the hierarchical structure for Mike in the institute? See, your boss.
Mike is the big boss.
The big boss.
So Mike is the director of performance sport in Scotland, and again a very, very well known and well connected character in British sport as well. So Mike heads up the team under performance. My role, I suppose, the beauty of my role is I work across sports development and the institute, so I get to kind of do performance and sports development. So my kind of line direct goes to John Lunn and Mike Roberts. And then obviously we all sit under Stuart Harris as CEO of Sports Scotland. But yeah, Mike's the boss when it comes to the performance side. And again, learned so much. Again, it's those. I guess it's these moments where you get tested. So Scottish volleyball are kind of, we're still going to be getting tested on COVID for probably another couple of years. But I would say at the minute, if you check the homework, we're doing all right.
Yeah.
But you also get the chance to learn from these people. So like you said, an email from Mike is potentially not a lot for him, but we learn a lot from it. And then we've been brought into that performance fold, which is obviously not traditionally, Scottish volleyball is not traditionally supported
No.
for performance. So again, one of the bonuses from the COVID times is that it has opened doors for sharing, and it has opened, I guess, the sporting family to make sure that we look after each other. So that what would normally be maybe a group that we don't interact with a lot as a sport, as volleyball, is become the kind of eyes and ears of the really world stage of sport, and then bringing that information back, allowing us to learn, supporting Scottish government to get their kind of the work that they're putting forward kind of as high level as we can. And then just making sure we get athletes playing. They want Scottish athletes competing and playing. And I think that's what we're achieving.
Yeah, I think testament to the work that we've done, we've managed to move, again, that email from Mike gave us the nod that we were, through our mitigation, we were ready to progress to the next step. So we were happy that last weekend our athletes were able to take the return to training plan to the next level. So what are they currently able to do then, Ben, with that mitigation?
Yes, I suppose the move from step 1 to step 2, which is where we are now, is probably the most daunting one to take, as far as and I think this is where you have to kind of check and challenge yourself, because at this moment, the athletes within the male and the female program, they essentially can mix and match on our courts. So in that performance environment, they can mix and match within the group of 8 that we've identified domestically, and they can play full open play. So we're now, with the move to step A, you suddenly become very far ahead of kind of where the community or the club guidance is. We've got athletes traveling to come together. They've also got that ability to now travel abroad and compete. So the step 2 really starts to become real. We can play more regular volleyball now, open play. And like I said, you're now quite a few steps or quite a few weeks ahead of the general public. So I think for us, it's that moment where you're kind of easing off the handbrake a little bit, but you're confident in all the kind of mitigations that you've put in place to manage it.
Brilliant. So that kind of leads us into that whole, we've moved to the next level. There's a lot more being allowed for these athletes that are scrutinised and following our return to training steps. We're going to actually segue into Nicky coming on. That takes us back to your glory playing days, mate. So once again, back to your days in the GB program. That's how you've met Nicky, and we want to just delve into a little bit about how you managed to rope her in to Scottish volleyball, and maybe just segue us in to what she's ultimately fulfilling for us. So back to the glory days of your playing career. How did you meet up with Nicky?
Yeah, so like you said there, me and Nicky, I don't want to say we go way back, but I suppose we do. I'm not even sure, Andy, if it went before then, in kind of England junior days or something. We probably played on opposite courts when we were kids or something. Yeah. But no, so Nicky was the women's captain for a time, as I was the men's. So as far as being together and working together and kind of that mix and match between the men's and the women's in the GB days down in Sheffield, that was kind of how we, I guess, first got to know each other as adults, as you want, as players, as athletes. Since then, I suppose it's always that always looking to recruit people into the sport. So that the moment I stopped playing and I kind of returned to the island and wanted to get involved in sport, you then always start to look for opportunities to bring in and kind of, I guess, get other people on board. So Nikki's always been one of those people. I worked with her when I was down at Leith, and we hosted one of the essentially one of the Olympic qualifiers, the Continental Cup for the beach. And Nikki, as you'd expect, kind of phone call, if I can pay you enough beer and pizza, can you come and help us? We've got this going on. We need quality. We need someone that knows what they're doing. And can we basically call in the favour from the playing days? And Nikki's always been one of those where she's an expert in her field, but if she gets the chance to kind of give back and put back in, then she's there. So that was probably the first opportunity to work with her. And then when COVID hit, again, you kind of think and you flick through your kind of, I guess, your address book, thinking, right, I'm going to need some help here. Who can I call on? Where can I go for support? And Nikki's name kind of comes up. So originally it's been with British Volleyball. So Nikki's kind of first come on board as CMO with the BVF, because we've had the BVF have had 6 athletes for the England men that are still in the Continental Cup, so still in line for Tokyo, using UK sport funding. So making sure that we had a CMO on board, a chief, kind of a COVID medical officer, and then a COVID officer as well, with Karen Beattie kind of filling that role with her. Essentially, we knew we could then mobilise them towards Tokyo. So, like I said to you, when the plans started to come together in November, then it was kind of time to speak to Nikki again and say, look, you're kind of first in our thoughts. I mean, yeah, anyone with the volleyball experience it's not an essential, but it's very important. They understand the game, they understand the people, how things work. It does smooth things over. And then kind of making sure that she was aware how the Scottish guidance looks, because obviously UK government, the DCMS guidance is slightly different to the Scottish government guidance. So making sure that almost my role was to try and translate parts of that for her and support her understanding. And then ultimately it's the boss, it's Margaret Ann. She kind of knows what it's like to work with kind of high end people. So we knew what it would take to bring Nikki on and get that kind of contract in place, that working relationship in place. Because again, it's these things are not often done as a volunteer, because it's if one of the athletes contracts COVID, it'll be a phone call to Nikki straight away as COVID officer. So it's all been done within the performance program, and it's kind of sits within that budget. It's I guess a bit more official than the beer and pizza kind of request.
But quite a lot of beer and pizza, but
yeah,
we've made it a bit more official this time.
Yeah, look, I say Nikki's outstanding in her own right, in her own field. So you need to respect that. And the job we're asking is a very serious job. Comes with very serious consequences for Nikki. If something isn't right, or if the documents aren't right, that can be her getting questioned by the medical council. So again, we're kind of joking about it now, and I'd like to think with Nikki, I think that's possible, but there is a very serious, I guess, note to this, and a very serious role that she plays, and I suppose that's where Scottish Volleyball have replicated that in the agreement that we've got with her and the contract that we've got for her services.
Yeah, we're very fortunate that you have that relationship and that contact, and that she's able to fulfil that, because I know that the role that she fulfills with the BVF and working with those guys going to Tokyo, and she's not exclusive just to volleyball. She works across other sports, so we're extremely lucky to have her. So another big thanks to you for being able to pull in somebody of this quality. We're cruising along here, mate. We've got our guys. They're on the sand. We've put out what we believe is really robust guidance and mitigation for them. How have you heard any reviews or any player testimonies from the athletes that we're working with about the whole process? Have you heard any chat?
No, I just tend to get stick from Mark McGivern about my hair. I think he's texting me now in the background. No, jokes aside. No, so I think look, I think there's a balance. I think the athletes are still maybe getting to know me and getting to know us as well. And I think sometimes there's that. My role is to disseminate the information, and like I said, try and be as real as possible. Try and be as accurate and as factual as we can. So I'm not sure if they're ready to be that honest with me yet. Whether they're kind of under their breath, kind of not happy with something. But no, we do get the feedback from the athletes of just how good it is to be back. And I know that like the volleyball community will be sitting there thinking the same, or they're able to play at distance now and 4 on a court, and it'll eventually move. It'll eventually move to open play for them as well. But yeah, look, I think there's a real, honestly, just glad to get back, and glad to get playing. And I guess probably the sinking realization that we're not kind of through the woods yet, if that makes sense. They've probably still got a lot of work to do. Like I said, it starts to get real complicated when you start traveling somewhere and you've got to isolate for 10 days, but you can leave your isolation to train, but you can't go to work. And it starts to get really, really interesting around that as well. But no, hopefully we'll get to the stage where they can be super honest and have a moan at me every now and again. Yeah. But I think most of the feedback's positive just to be back playing. Okay,
there's only one other thing we need to touch on. I think it's no big secret, Ben. It's been out there. We're advertising for a professional coach.
Yeah.
Now we sat down and we had a discussion about this before Christmas, and we weren't sure that we were going to get to this stage at all. And lo and behold, we've managed to pull it out the stop. So, what's your reflection on that process from the idea to where we're at now?
Yeah, a roller coaster is one way to look at it. But I think I was speaking to somebody about this before. It's one of those where you'd rather be at the front and be involved than at the back and not trying to do these things. So it's developed and it's grown, I think, as the impact of the pandemic has affected us, and we've learned and grown. So yeah, I remember the calls with you, Andy. I think my quote was, "I've been for a run and we're gonna go for this." And it was, sometimes you just need that headspace, I guess, to think like, right, if we're going to get a coach, we need to go big. We need somebody that can guide this and shares that ambition and has that quality to deliver it. And then also we need to potentially look to get flexibility within the contract to bring them to Scotland, and be able to deliver kind of within there. So there's a lot of flexibility being built in, and I think a lot of creativity as well, to allow us to get something that's going to work for Scottish volleyball, for the beach athletes, and hopefully for everyone to benefit from. I think that'd be the one thing, if anybody's listening now, it's the moment you see that coach on the sand, ask them a question, try and learn something, whether it's about indoor, whether it's about beach, whether it's about anything. If we get them to the island and we get them in place, then they're there to contribute to everybody, as well as kind of keep the seniors on target for the Commonwealth Games.
Yeah, I mean, it's excited in one aspect, but it's a lot of pressure at my end and your end. I'm not going to lie. I'd be telling fibs if I was saying I was sleeping easy about it. Closing dates for applications is coming up this weekend, so it's a really exciting time, and we've got our fingers crossed. Obviously the funding we got was from FIVB through their projects platform, which again you explored that as a potential avenue through the different strands that they have there, and the proposal that we wrote was well received, and obviously we've been very successful with securing the funding to make this happen. So I guess we're just sort of waiting to see what happens in the next couple of weeks. What we're going to do now is I'm picking up some chatting backstage that Nicky has joined us, and we're hoping that there may well be a little bit of technical issues. So we're hoping that when we bring her out onto the screen in the studio, that might resolve itself. So we're gonna give this a go. Mark Perkins and Mark McGivern are having a little side chat in the show. Good evening, guys. If you're watching, I hope you're enjoying our content this evening. By the power of TV, can we bring out Nikki? The moment of truth. Okay, Nikki, can you hear us?
Doesn't look like it.
Hello.
Hello, we can hear you. Oh, we're not getting audio to her, but we're getting audio from her.
I'm not.
Ah, this is a first for us at Scottish Volleyball TV. Audio out, but not audio in.
Blair will fix it, Andy. Don't you worry. Blair will fix it.
He was. Do you know what? This is because he was saying, you've done this before, Ben. This is an easy shift for me." He did. He cursed himself at the top of the show. I wonder what people are thinking. If you're watching the show and you're listening to what we're talking about in terms of COVID and in terms of the advertisement of the coach, I wonder if you've got any thoughts or views on it. That you might want to pop in the chat, or any questions that you might have for Ben and around his work that we've been doing. So if you're watching, you're curious as to what he's up to, or if you want to challenge him on that haircut, then now might be the time. While we've got a little bit of technical issues going on with Nicky. Sorry, Ben, on you go.
I was going to say the only other side that we've got, I guess, coming next, Andy, when it comes to the guidance, is the events. So there's obviously the elite side of what we've been building from that foundation document. Also, then involves the ability to. It allows us to go to Scottish Government and try and seek approval for elite events in Scotland. So essentially, elite is defined where if it contributes to our world ranking points, or if it contributes to qualifying in one of the other direct routes for the Commonwealth Games, then we can use that leeway and that foundation document to build up towards what is then basically step 3 and step 4. So we'll be kind of keep pursuing that with Veronica from competitions and the Small Countries Association and the CEV and the FIVB and all of the communication and dispensations that takes, and getting that to Scottish Government so that they can have a look and see that they're comfortable with the plans that we've got for that. And then we've obviously also got in September the kind of main event, if you want, which hopefully by then, you never know with COVID, I guess, but it might be a more regular event. I still think it might be kind of broadcasted online as opposed to spectators by September, but fingers crossed it's a bit more like normality. And that'll be a chance there to get behind the Scottish teams and really our first big push at actually qualifying. That's when we'll really get tested to see if it's worked.
I think that's one of the things that we're really keen to do, is we're trying to make sure that we can get these guys out there, get them playing and get them moving towards that. Adam Payton, who's our special events commission chair, I know that his group is meeting very regularly to make sure that we are we're pushing in the right direction to make our events happen. We would love to be able to have the spectators there, but we're obviously at the mercy of COVID and the mercy of the Scottish Government and how we're trying to mitigate those returns. How do you see it being in terms of those domestic tournaments that we're talking about, and potentially the international travel that we may need to look at to get points? What do you think that's going to look like for us?
Yeah, so the competitions, I suppose, if you're a lover of kind of organisation and events, which I know there's a few people on the events commission that love a bit of that.
Yeah, they do.
Then yeah, look, now's the time to shine. It's about how well you can organise and mobilise plans and think about complex details and kind of try and think through issues that might come up. So in essence, what you would do is kind of create like a competition bubble. So you start to look at who's coming in and from where. What dispensation would you need to allow them to travel? What testing requirements would there be? Is it PCR pre-travel? Is it lateral flow when they arrive? Is it symptom tracking? Is it temperature checking? Is it periods of isolation before they start training? And then there's obviously all of the kind of the what if scenario kind of planning almost of, if someone becomes symptomatic, then what do you do? If someone tests positive, what do you do? And at that moment, I guess that's where it stops just being a sport issue, and you need to liaise with the local health authority. You need to liaise with kind of potentially government clinical teams on what's going to happen, where they're going to go. So it's a lot of work. But if you've got those people, like you said, the likes of Adam and the events commission, that's their moment, I guess, to shine. And in the background, I suppose the update to give is the documents are kind of ready to go to government just now for that first kind of small countries event that we've got that dispensation for from the Small Countries Association. So we're in a really strong position, and it is through the likes of Adam and Veronica and the team there, and then that foundation plan, which gives us a bit of a wayfinder, I guess, to be able to work out what we need to do and how we need to do it. The international travel is a really changing scene. If you'd have asked me that same question before Christmas, what I would have told you would be different. And then trying to look forward, even into the future, is a really unknown territory. The discussions have become more around variants when it comes to travel. So, and then obviously a lot of people are seeing in the press around where you have like a variant of interest and you have variant of concern. So it's quite common for there to be variants in diseases. So it's not unusual to have these variants, but everyone's trying to avoid them because of its impact on case numbers, subsequently on deaths, and then obviously as well on the vaccine rollout, for which kind of Scotland and the UK are doing well. They're faring well at the minute. So there's a real nervousness around travel and a real reality that in performance sport, again, if you're reading the press, that's often where the issues are coming. Traveling teams, going different places, that is a bit of a pinch point when it comes to the spread of COVID. So we will be sending teams because they need to go. That's why they're under that elite guidance. That's why we've got the mitigation. That's why we've got the doctor. But it is quite a heavy burden, I think, for them to go. And I think the biggest risk, Andy, is the hotel quarantine. The way to think about the red list is you've got the red list, and then everyone else is amber, unless they're part of the British Isles. So at any moment, one of those amber countries can turn red, and if it turns red while you're there, then you've got a hotel quarantine on return and an £1,800 bill for it. So it is quite challenging to navigate.
Yeah, I've got a lot of nervousness about it. I'm not going to lie, but we're having to navigate these waters as we go. And I guess the pressure, again, this is why I've used the word pressure quite a lot tonight. The pressure is on us to try and get these guys to qualify, and to do that, we will have to navigate these waters. And I guess that's why we've been working so hard to get the mitigation, and I mean how robust that is to try and make sure that we don't get into the situation where, you know, we're having athletes having hotel quarantines, and because it also has another knock-on effect. One of the things that people need to remember is that our athletes aren't full-time athletes. They're probably got other jobs, you know. We're obviously looking at some of the jobs inside the players that we've got. Some of them are key workers, some of them are frontline staff, and for them to get hotel quarantined would be an absolute nightmare. So I guess that's what we're saying. I'm looking at the chat, and it looks like we're now ready to bring Nicky back to the screen on SVTV. Good evening, Nicky. Can you hear us?
Good evening. I can hear you. Can you hear me, Andy?
Yes. Welcome to SVTV.
I'm
An
so
amazing
sorry.
from your debut.
A year down the line, and you know, them still getting flummoxed by this technology, and it is a new one for me. So apologies.
No, don't worry. We've managed to help you, and we've managed to crack it, and we've got you on the show, which is great. Fantastic. How have you been? Obviously, the last few minutes have made you sweat a little. So how have you been?
hopefully Ben has entertained you, or vice versa. But yes, not too bad, thank you. It's been ups and downs, hasn't it, for everybody? But I, for one, feel optimistic about the coming months. The sun has come out. I think everything is going in a good direction, so I feel optimistic.
That's what we want to hear from everybody. We want to hear that optimism at SVTV. We love to hear it. So obviously, I don't know if you heard much, but Ben was waxing lyrical about you and the relationship that you had, and he says he still owes you a lot of beer and pizza for being coerced into the role that you fulfil with us. Volleyball, so don't let him off the hook for that. Next time
I owed him dinner from something else, but I don't know.
No, so listen, Nicky, he told everybody that we're a little bit about what you're doing for us as CMO. Now that we've got you here, let's get your views. So, how's your role going as CMO for Scottish Volleyball?
It's been really fun so far, actually. So the role, as I see it, is mainly in a COVID capacity. So all the sports, every sport now has to have a doctor involved, whether it's a sport that historically has needed a doctor before or not. I definitely had some of the Scottish athletes go, not quite sure why we've ever needed a doctor, but here COVID is, and here everybody needs a doctor in order to kind of do risk assessments, so medicals on players, not only on players but also a little bit on households, because obviously in the COVID situation it's not just about an athlete opting into a scenario, it's also about a family or who they're living with, making sure that everybody is happy, that an athlete is returning to train. The role would involve athletes who have symptoms, whether it's COVID or otherwise, and how we manage that. And there are quite strict guidelines that have been put in place across the UK through different experts as to how we would go about returning someone to elite sport. So that's really important. And then going forward, I'd be hopeful that the role can expand to supporting the athletes on a more kind of sports science, advice or medical advice to help with performance. Kind of obviously the Commonwealth Games are a massive target, and we're hopeful that as time goes on, this will be less about COVID and all the risk assessments will be in place and everything will be sorted. So actually it'll be about playing, getting back on the court, playing matches, and getting athletes back to the level of performance that they want to be at. So at the minute it's very COVID heavy, as we would expect.
You've had I think you've went through most of the medicals that you've had with our players now. There's only a few that are being, as we use the phrase, onboarded. So you've almost met the entire program. I hope that was an interesting experience for you. I obviously don't want to delve too deep into it. I'm sure that you met some wonderful athletes in our midst. Nicky, we were very conscious that we tried to get you on a little bit earlier, but you're super busy. And a little birdie told me I wouldn't be doing my job if I didn't do my research, that you're also involved heavily with hockey and a little bit of netball during this COVID time. How are we stacking up against some of these other sports in terms of the direction that we're going?
It's a great question with Ben in the background there. In actual fact, I think volleyball historically, as we all know, has been an underdog from funding. And that has meant, I think, historically, that we haven't necessarily had the support and the access to kind of the science that maybe the bigger sports have. The cycling, the hockey has a decent amount of money, and COVID has leveled the playing field a bit, and that has meant that people want to share information, and it's meant that I've been very lucky to have access to some of the information from the doctors, which I can share with Scottish Volleyball, but also the sites that Ben has, I think have been invaluable. I'm not
Yeah.
just saying this because he owes me a pizza, but I think it's that sharing of knowledge. And I think across the board, you know, Ben's had some insights from the SIS which have been huge in terms of not only the speed of which Scottish volleyball can get back, but also, you know, doing it in a safe, productive, efficient way, so that we're not going round and round in circles. I think that's been really, really important. And I think the athletes are aware of that, of how much work has gone in. It's not straightforward. And I think it's great that all that knowledge has been shared across the sport. So actually, from a COVID perspective, we're the same as the other sports. We're doing it, you know, we've got the same rules, same regs. It's efficient, it's professional. And that just bodes well kind of going forward for the next 18 months and what's coming up, that we're doing things, even if the finances aren't there, actually we can be as professional in what we're doing as all the other sports.
Brilliant.
And it's been great. I mean, I really, having started the process of COVID medicals, they're sometimes a bit daunting because it's a lot of conversations sat down, although Ben's got a stand-up desk, which I need to get hold of. But sometimes when there's a whole list of athletes, it can be quite daunting when you start the process off. But genuinely, it's been nothing but really enjoyable process to just meet people. And I know it's all remote in a Zoom, but actually it's just really fun to get to know different people, different athletes who are doing different things and what they're doing at the minute, how excited people are to get back to training. Yeah. I mean, you know, it's just it's a nice time to get to know people who are keen athletes in a sport that I love. So yeah, it often feels like quite a long process at the start of the conversations, but actually personally I've really enjoyed them. I don't know if the athletes have got something so different to say about that, but it's been really nice, and I've actually been inspired by a lot of them. Yeah. Genuinely, I've been inspired to take up rowing. But also to get back onto the beach volleyball court. And actually, for the first time in about 8 years, I'm going to play beach on Monday because you're allowed to now. So
there you go.
You heard it here first. It might be a one-hit wonder.
Listen, if you get a chance to play, it's always a great thing. Nobody on the screen is going to say anything different. Nikki, I want to ask you a little bit about something that I was made aware of. Apparently, you have done some international travel in the COVID landscape. What we are anticipating through our program with our beach athletes, they will have to travel. Maybe you can just talk us through what that's like, because obviously we've got athletes who have travelled in a world without COVID, and now we're going to put them on to that international journey. So your experiences from not just from a medical point of view and a COVID point of view, but just from somebody who has travelled and the difference in what they can expect.
Yeah, it's a really interesting point, Andy, I think, because a lot of the opt-in processes which we're doing currently with athletes are in a home environment where they're staying at home, and everyone's desperate to train and play. And the opt-in process is fairly straightforward. Most people who have put themselves in this bucket have decided that they want to return to training. And you can have all the questions about, actually, if something happens, you can opt out. You're very free to opt out. But actually, until that sort of travel component comes in, I think the opt-in process is very different. And so experiences, a couple of sort of take-homes from me from traveling were that risk of being quarantined abroad in a hotel room and the risk of getting COVID, even if you're not unwell, in a country you don't know, suddenly becomes very, very real. And that decision to do that is a very different decision to returning to training on home soil.
Yeah.
And the testing process, if you're about to be selected to travel, you know, having a COVID test in that environment is very different to having a COVID test when you're at home and you might have to miss a bit of work or a bit of home life. If you've been training for, you know, years on end for an event and you're about to be tested for COVID, which is completely out of your control, the anxiety around those tests becomes very different, and that will change as this summer goes on. I think people will get used to doing tests and waiting for those results. But I think that's we do obviously a lot of psychology in sport in terms of in volleyball, kind of when you're up in a game or when you're down in a game, serve, receive. There's a lot of different psychological components that can be worked on. But actually, the COVID, not necessarily getting COVID, but actually the testing creates a whole another sort of ballpark, which I don't think we've never considered before COVID. And that, to me, for me, in a travel scenario, has been a big area to consider, is how you prepare to have those tests. Can you prepare? Do you worry about it? Do you not worry about it? What can you do to put yourself at the least risk possible so that you're completely minimizing those risks, before you travel? Being really prepared. So actually, on some of the trips we've gone on, I've been on a couple of trips, and they've been almost 2 weeks, almost 1 week. And it's like you've got your list of stuff that you pack when you're going away on a trip. But actually, as long as you've got your training kit, your match kit, and the food that you need and your passport, everything else is kind of a bonus. You can go and grab something. But in a COVID scenario, you can't just pop to the shops. So just odd things that you've forgotten about, making sure you've got enough tea bags to last you the trip, because you can't just go out to the shops and get it, because that completely bursts your bubble. So it's just planning in a different level, sort of the week before you travel. If you're needing to be isolating before you travel to compete, then actually the planning of getting petrol in your car, all the food you need for that week, and then when you're traveling, I mean, it's a different list. For those people that are prepared, you need to be better prepared, and for those that are often rely on their teammate to drag them through, also need to be very prepared.
Yeah, we've talked about that. I think Ben, if you're able to come off mute, we can talk about this. We've added to our team just recently. One of our colleagues, Drew Wallace, is going to provide sports psychology for our athletes. So it's great that you've hammered that home. In terms of communication between you two guys, because obviously Ben was the one that convinced you to take on this role. How much communication are you guys having? Because again, before you came on, Nicky, we were talking about the amount of work that Ben's been doing in the background. So how much background back and forth has there been between you guys? Ben, what would you say that work level's been?
I think the bit for me is that the beauty is the communication's there when you need it. So I don't want that to sound cliche, but the best thing to have in the role that I've been doing and trying to mobilize this is I know I've got Nikki on the end of a phone, or I know I can send her something and she's gonna give really good critical and then also clinical feedback on something as well. So the truth is it probably varies. Sometimes it'll be sending document after document. Sometimes it's maybe not a lot, because so I suppose it's that the piece for me is it's there when it's needed, and that is the difference, is when you've got that expert to call on, and you really need them. Again, in a COVID world, you really need them. So yeah, I would say it varies, but to have Nikki there as that expert and with the quality she's got is, yeah, that's the kind of crowning part.
Yeah, and has it been fun working with Ben again, Nikki?
Getting put on the spot here, Nikki. Answer honestly.
It has been, and it's been a few years since we worked together, and I was really excited when Ben started doing some more work with the BBF and then with Scottish Volleyball. It's interesting that he's chosen, he's made a transition. There was always a lot of players, or at least when I was playing, well, not a lot of players, but a player in particular who we'll all know, who had moved from playing for Scotland to England, well-known player, and so it's interesting now, with the good rivalry between England and Scotland, that Ben has taken a leadership role for Scottish Volleyball, and that I'm joining forces and helping out with with Team Scotland as well. So it's good. It's been nice to work with Ben again, and there's always been good communication with us since we were playing years ago now. And it's just really nice to know that you can trust what someone's going to do, trust that he's always, as we all know, very hardworking. And it was a good team back when we were playing, and actually it's really nice to just sort of extend that communication and to trust what's coming back and forth and know that he's doing a good job, so that anything I can add to that I know is going to be positive in producing performance and not wasted efforts, if that makes sense. Because a lot of stuff happening at the minute and people aren't sure which direction to go in, and I think Ben is taking this in a really positive direction. Everything that's been done and being asked of the athletes and the staff that's working with Ben is always productive and efficient, which I'm quite impressed by.
It wouldn't be a show without Lynn Beattie chipping in with it. What a team giving back is always very grateful for the work that you guys have done for our sport. Beats, great to see you walking. Louise McGivern, how are you? Aussie. Oh, there's a nickname getting flung around here. Well, old friend. Nicky, you know Louise. Yeah. We've got our reach going out there just now. We've got our people out in the world that are viewing, so the McGiverns are watching, and it's great to see. I think one of the things that we've kind of got is that that you were involved as a player, Nicky. I think one of the things that we've said is that yes, you are a doctor, but you've alluded to your past life as a player. I don't know if our viewers are fully aware of your journey. So if you wouldn't mind just telling us how much volleyball you've actually played. Oh, we're on. Here comes that old saying, we're on mute.
Yeah, so no, there we go. I've got a little bit of extra noise. I'm just hoping that you can't hear that as well. I'd almost hand over to Louise McGivern to give that story, but how much volleyball have I played? I used to play beach, so I grew up in the New Forest, played with Wessex, so the early days were definitely indoors and beach. Wessex volleyball have got a really good sort of junior program, and so played a little bit from when I was 16, and then took a journey through with England juniors, Mallory for National League, and then went on to play England seniors against Lynn Beattie and with Mel Coots back a few years ago. So that was good fun. And then when London won the bid, was just in the right place, right time to get involved in what was an amazing program to be part of, and played up until London, and didn't play in the Olympics, played up until that summer, which was great fun, and I wouldn't have changed anything for the world. So it was brilliant fun. Would I go back to playing indoors? Not sure at the minute. Would I go back to playing beach? I've always had a soft spot for beach. I'm not just saying that. I'm a coastal girl, so the beach is always an attraction, and it's a different game, as we all know, a completely different game. Same skill set, completely different. Game mentally. So just getting some scholars coming through. So yeah, it's really lovely to get back involved in volleyball and to be able to give back in a way that's different, particularly at the minute. I mean, as everybody knows, it's always been the hard work of physios like Karen, in and off the volleyball court, and it's always the physios that package everyone together. And a doctor has really not played any role on a regular basis. So it's nice to be involved back in with a team environment and to get back.
Fabulous. I know that we only have you for a short period of time, and I appreciate you muddling through with the technical side of things, Nicky. So I did have one more question that I kind of wanted to explore. If you've got the time to answer it, I'd really appreciate it. becoming a doctor is no mean feat, and you've done that whilst balancing a pretty high level journey in volleyball. A lot of our athletes, maybe our younger athletes, are at that sort of stage where they're doing education and they're still balancing that performance journey. Whilst I've got two performance superstars on screen, I would love to delve into how you manage that. So, Nikki, how did you go about doing that? Mute. You're on mute again. Oh, did you not hear the question?
Sorry, there we go. Sorry, I didn't quite get the question, Andy. Sorry.
Yeah, we're just saying that obviously you managed to become a doctor whilst playing high level volleyball. How did you manage to balance the two?
Balance the two. So Sheffield was a good place to be. So I ended up doing medical training while we were training full time in Sheffield. And one of the things I've told a few of the sort of netball players, younger netball players that I've been working with, is that it's always helpful actually to have. I always think to have something outside of the sport you're doing. And the athletes, as an athlete, everybody is so focused on what you need to be doing, and that can put quite a lot of pressure in areas where you don't necessarily need it. Self-induced pressure, and having something outside of it, outside of playing volleyball, was always really helpful, in the same way as having stuff outside of medical school was really helpful as well. I remember going to final exams, really not caring how I did, but really, really wanting to go on a trip to Peru, because that was the most important thing. And actually, it really helped with my anxiety about exams. And I did really well in that exam because I just didn't care about it. And so actually just changing your perspective. And I've used that going forward to just try and take your mind off things. I know a lot of athletes who have gone on to have, some athletes that have gone on to have children and then have a different perspective when they're competing, because they, and have done really well. And it's not to say it's better or worse, it's just a different perspective when you've got something else in addition to just focusing on playing volleyball. And there's times when actually you just need to be able to focus on training and competing. But for those that have got other stuff going on, academics, schoolwork, family life, actually it can be used to really help improve, I think, focus and performance. It's just having that switch, to be able to switch between one and the other. There's a really interesting podcast I was listening to the other day by a sports psychologist on identity and retirement, actually, of athletes, but in the process of competing, how athletes identify themselves as, or what athletes identify as being, is really important to how they can manage with different stresses, both competing and then afterwards when you're retiring. And actually, if you've got a different identity at different times, it can make that journey easier for some people. But it wasn't always easy, and I always felt bad turning up late to training. But it's definitely possible to do more than one thing in one day. But it was massively helped by teammates. I mean, Lynn Beattie definitely had my back.
Yeah. Ben, your perspective, do you have that same sort of mindset of something else helps?
Yeah, 100%. And I was kind of thinking, almost trying to work out my answer as Nikki was talking. So I suppose my journey was probably different. Like left home at 16, moved school, lived in my coach's loft, stayed in education until I was 18, and then turned professional. So I guess slightly different, but the themes are the same. Like I quickly learned through that journey, it was easy to obsess. So it was easy to obsess about training and actually trying to be 100% volleyball 100% of the time was detrimental to how good I needed to be. Like I started to learn from the pro players that I was kind of chucked into the environment in the different leagues that I played in, and for them it was about they needed to be good in the hours of training and they needed to peak at the weekend during the match, and they needed to peak at the end of the season when it was money time, when that was go time as a professional. That's why you're there. That's why you're paid. Whereas for me, it was like everything had to always be like 100% and go for it. And in reality, it made me less effective. So I think I learned that journey through, I guess for me, it was like an apprenticeship in volleyball was how I look at my professional career. It was my trade. It was something I wanted to do from an early age. But I quickly learned you needed that ability to be 100% in and then 100% out. Yeah. So whatever I was doing, I wanted to be able to give 100%, not be thinking, oh, should have done that then and watch that video there and weigh that and check this. And it was like, no, when training's done, I've packed that bag, I'm done. And then as I'm tying up my shoelaces to go into the gym, now it's go time. And I think the other one, just on Nicky's point, I think since I've stopped playing, I think that identity piece has probably been the hardest bit to really shake, if that makes sense, because there is that element of you've got to separate that difference of this is what I do versus this is who I am. So there's that, and it's, I don't want to kind of go into too much of the psychological side. I'm not qualified to do that. I'll leave that to the likes of Nicky that kind of understand that. But I think for me, there's that risk of, by 2012, it was Ben Pipes, the volleyball player, when, okay, there's a few people that maybe know me outside of that, or they know me past that. But if you're not careful, you just become that thing. And then it's kind of like, it's very, when you then don't have that to go back to, when you don't have, or you want to pursue a different avenue, it is really hard to break away from that. So I think for me, I kind of went through a bit of a different journey, and like Nicky said, the same evolution. I learned to add things on to my playing and realize that made me more efficient, more effective. And then I guess my advice would be is that idea of make this something that you do and not who you are. And don't be afraid to have a personality. Don't be afraid to do things outside of volleyball and be a normal human being, because that is how we make good teams. That's how we make good athletes, is character. It's not robots. So that would be, I guess, my advice kind of back, and what I'm learning from the wider world that I work in now with cycling, with athletics, with curling, with surfing, with table tennis. Like, I'm in this position now to work with all these different people, and learn from all of that as well now.
Brilliant. Well, listen, I know that we did say we weren't going to take up too much of Nicky's time, and I'm really conscious of that. So what we're going to do is, it was always scheduled to be a shorter show this evening, just to accommodate Nicky's time. I will say to both of you a massive thanks, and I don't know if it doesn't really go far enough. I know the amount of work that you guys have been putting in the background. I've been the recipient of a Ben Pipes email at almost 2 a.m. So from everybody at Scottish Volleyball, we want to say thank you to you both for the hard work and the many hours that you've been putting on. What we'll do is we'll take you backstage. You'll go and Blair will give you a little chat. I'll wrap up the show and we'll come back together. But for now, thank you for joining us, Ben and Dr. Nicky.
Brilliant. Cheers, Andy.
Thank you. All right. A really compact SVTV tonight. We were very conscious that we only had a short window with Nicky this evening, and it was very, very important for us to get this message about how we're working through COVID and the sort of work that the wider team is doing to ensure that our athletes can come back safely. What we are doing from a Scottish Volleyball point of view is learning the lessons that we're doing through the Elites programme, and then making sure that we can filter that back through to our community strands at different levels. So I hope you've enjoyed the show. Again, if you are watching back, or if you're interested in the information, drop us a comment, let us know where you're watching from or when you're watching it, which is great. I'm going to wrap up tonight because it is the bank holiday weekend. We're going to be taking a short break at Scottish Volleyball, and we'll be back in the office as of Tuesday. So for everybody who is about to have a holiday weekend, we hope you enjoy the outdoor environment. We hope you keep it and continue to play safe. and enjoy the weather that we're hopefully going to have up until potentially Sunday. But until then, from me, good night, and